I make a way bigger difference in people's lives, developing their apps and putting their ideas into the world. My most recent client, she's like, this app has been developed for 2 years, and you've done in less than 6 weeks what they didn't do for 2 years.
Hello and welcome to Cisse Collab Space. I am your host, Amy Cisse, and we are joined by Victoria Walker. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. I would love for you to start off with an introduction so that the viewers can get a better understanding of who you are.
Yes, so I'm Victoria. I'm a software engineer, and I'm also the founder of Vivify Solutions, which is a software development company that works as a one-stop shop for tech founders who are not so technical. So I help them do their product discovery, their software development, and their marketing to see them through to a successful product launch.
Nice. And we started communicating a year ago. And we've
Yeah.
had some really good conversations since then. So I definitely wanted you to join this podcast because I've always been impressed by everything that you're doing. So I just said she has to share with the world what she's working on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm also like very inspired by you. I remember when we were introduced, I was like super excited to meet someone else that was like along the same path as me as a mentor. So definitely have appreciated all your advice you've shared over the past year.
Thank you. And that's what this podcast is about, right? It's helping people with getting insight into all the different areas of tech and how people got into tech and just learning along the way. So, first and foremost, it would be great to hear how you even got started in tech.
Yep. So I would say my official start is when I started fixing iPhones, and I had like found an iPhone around the house that was my brother's, and I asked my mom for it, and she's like, if you fix it, you can have it. And so I fixed it. And then later, like when I was in high school, I was working at this modeling kiosk, and this guy walked by with this shirt with iPhones that were like dripping paint, and I was like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, I work at the phone repair kiosk." I was like, "I can fix a phone," just talking. And he was like, "Let me see." So I walk over, I go fix the phone, and they were like, "Oh, okay, you want a job?" And so it paid more than obviously the job that I was working at. So I accepted it, and then about a year and a half later, they kind of went bankrupt. So I was like, how am I going to get a job in this? Like always. So I went to ITT Tech, learned a lot while I was there because I had some good teachers and some good peers. And I took my first coding course. And then when I graduated from there, they shut down immediately after for loan fraud. But I had an app idea, and I was like, I took a coding class before, so maybe I can just learn how to code and create my own app. And so I started embarking on that journey. And then I realized that I wanted to work as a software engineer, but I also wanted to start a software company because I realized during my journey that it was actually hard for some people to get development done or to find developers that could communicate well or just really ask the right questions so that they had the proper product developed. And I got my first job, $15 an hour, some really small owned business in Virginia. And then from there, I went to a coding boot camp. And that was kind of a sacrifice because I had to move to like DC for like 3 months. I had to leave my dog. I had to live with 5 roommates. They paid me $8 an hour. Like it was a sacrifice, but I knew that I needed them to co-sign me getting into like the Fortune 500 companies. So past that boot camp, COVID happened, tried to take that from me, but I still managed to pull through that and then got my first job at the Department of Labor. And I was there for about a year.
Wow. Okay, so you said a lot, right? So you went from fixing phones, the hardware side, then you went into learning how to code and building apps. You've touched a lot of different aspects. Because I've never gotten into hardware. I'm actually not good at hardware, quite honestly.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool because that means that you've kind of just, I would say, gain insight into all those different realms. And you kind of sound like you just picked your path and chose a lane that you wanted to go down.
Yeah. Yeah, the hardware aspect was cool. I did it as a job until I got into engineer and software engineering, and it was just really slow and boring and repetitive. Like designing circuit boards is cool, but
Mm,
designing the same circuit boards with like little upgrades and it just was a really slow career. And they were like, "Oh, like you can get a $2 raise." I'm like, "Oh, yay! In 10 years, I'll maybe make halfway to six figures," you know.
mm,
So, so yeah, like it's cool that I can do like I can take anything apart and probably put it back together. Like I can solder, like I understand microchips and like programming them. But the software, like creating something from nothing on a computer really kind of intrigued me. And then for a business, I was like, oh, like if I go into business doing this, I won't really need inventory. So I can just like
mm.
but I need developers. So, there's still some type of cost to the business, but I make a way bigger difference in people's lives developing their apps and putting their ideas into the world.
Talk about that a bit more because I also kind of just heard of a lot of horror stories where people are trying to find someone to build an app and they see the offshore talent that's $25 an hour and they have a lot of communication issues and they don't get the apps built the way that they're expecting it to be built, or they have issues with scheduling meetings in the middle of the night because your people are working in a different country.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of bridge that gap for companies that maybe don't have a clue as to how to actually pick the right company to build an app for them?
Yeah. So it's so common. Basically, every client that I've had so far has been in development for 2 years. And they're like, I don't know. Every time I come back up for air, there's something else broken. And I don't fully understand like what I'm even supposed to be expecting. So me as a software engineer, having the government experience, having the fintech startup experience, and now having the corporate experience, I'm able to take all the security aspects from DOL or all the corporate like procedural aspects from JP Morgan, and then the fintech startup, it was just a bunch of like delivery. Like with a startup, you have to deliver fast. So taking all of that and then knowing as a software engineer myself that, okay, if you don't tell me this, I can't develop the way you need me to. So I created a product discovery phase that's kind of tailored to what I know from all of those, where I get all of the details I could possibly get and just kind of set people up. And I say, you're not tied to development with me, but if you do this, you'll be set to do development with anyone. And so they
Mm,
gain my trust because they're not like, oh, she's not like doing this so that we're tied with her. Like we can really go wherever we want. But they always end up going with me because I've built the trust with them. But the communication is important. So I'm the middleman. Like I literally will code on these projects myself if things are not getting done right. So that's like the guarantee. It's like, hey, I know you've been scarred before by these people. Mostly it's always in India. Like they always go over to Asia because it's $10, $15 an hour. But the communication gap is just too much. So I go over to Africa now. So most of my developers are from Kenya. It's still cheaper, but they're not really trying to sync my project the way in Asia they have their own agencies. So every time I hire them, it's like, I'll take this project on and I'll just pop back up with you with something. And it's like, absolutely not. Like, you
mm,
need to give me updates every day. I'm in the chat. You need to use my Jira board. Here are the tasks that you have. So I'm just really on top of them. And some people get shocked because they're like, she's a woman. Like, oh my God, like how's she doing all this? It's because like I'm here to get a job done, you know?
right.
So my developers that I have now, when they come on, I'm just like, hey, this is what I expect from you. And we all know that developer rotation is like you can come in, you can come out, you can come in. It's just like normal. So it's kind of like if you just don't do it, then I'm gonna find the next person who will do exactly what I'm saying because my clients trust my process. So I understand that you've had this process from before, but try something new. And we've been developing apps in like 3 months. So it's been
Wow.
exciting. Yeah, my most recent client, she's like, "This app has been developed for 2 years, and you've done in less than 6 weeks what they didn't do in 2 years." Like, so the
That's
process
impressive.
is working. Yeah, and it's continuing to be refined, for me. I always get scared to do things, but I'm like, I gotta trust myself at this point and just like try and fail upward. I guess that's what I call it. I'm like, fail upward. Like, try it and then take notes on what you need to do better next time.
Right. So love that you're using developers in Africa, especially since my family's from there and I believe in building up
Yes.
Africa as much as possible for sure, giving them some love. And the other piece that you mentioned that was very, very significant because I can relate to it as well is really understanding how the development should be done. Even if you're not in there getting the work done yourself as a business owner, you can't do it all, right?
Yeah.
You have to trust your team, but you also have to know what to look for to make sure that the client can get exactly what they need.
Yep.
We have our process too. We're not doing app development, but we build custom solutions and around Microsoft 365 products. And we have a QA process where the developer is not the person who does QA. It's always going to be someone else with a fresh pair of eyes that's going to be the one who reviews who the person's work that did the development. And then for me, I'm going to come in and make sure with the checks and balances that the client is going to get exactly what they need because my name is on the line.
Yep. That's exactly how it works for me. So, and that's why I love that. Like, if the developers are not doing what they need to be doing,
Mhm,
I'm
mhm.
going to do it. I will be up all night making sure we're delivering what we said we're going to deliver on. So I think that's why people probably trust me because they're like, oh, she's actually a software engineer. So far it's good. I haven't really had the point is to get out of the business, right? And to delegate. But like you said, I know what to look for. So I do the code reviews. We're not merging anything unless I've actually looked at it until I find someone, which I think I found. I have like a partner now, he's a VP of engineering that can look at it and say, actually, no, like this is not quality code, or this is not like this UI UX design really looks good to you. Like the button is not centered, like things that seem to be common sense. Unfortunately, like us software engineers, I'm the exception. We're so technical and we're just like, oh, okay, the button's there. Next. And it's like, but does the button look right? Like, is it centered to the screen? Is the user actually going to know that this button is clickable? Like, just small things that I think me as a software engineer, I would add in and just without being asked. But there are very, very technical software engineers that you have to hash out every detail for them. So I am able to just kind of oversee that and be like, no, you got to put a shadow behind that so they can see the difference.
Right. And it's like those little details that make a big difference. And from a development, very technical perspective, they're
Yeah.
probably thinking it doesn't matter, it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal, right? Because if users can't use it or they're confused, or what I like to give perspectives on is you can't use red to say that these fields are required because what if they're colorblind, right? Like
Exactly.
you have to think about like 508 compliance as it relates to the government. So we
Yep.
have to consider not just what we can see, but just what everybody experiences. And if it's video and captions or transcripts and thinking about screen readers, it's that holistic user experience that's important that's sometimes missed because people are so high level with their technical capabilities. And
Yeah.
I know you can build all these functions behind the scenes, but I need you to make sure that it's usable for end users.
Exactly. Yeah, and marketable. Like make it look good a little bit. It surprises me how many software engineers don't know about the Andy tool, which
Mm,
is literally just a bookmark tool that you put on and then you can kind of like click it and it will let you know what in your app is against 508 compliance. And then it'll tell you how to fix it. So it'll say, hey, like, the contrast here is like too bright, like white. Like I've seen this too many times where there's like white font on a yellow background. And it's
mm.
like, can you actually see that? Because I can barely see that.
Exactly. No one can read that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the security, right? There's a lot of people who code and they just kind of get it out there and they're just like not really caring. My biggest pet peeve, and some people are gonna hate me for saying this, but a lot of startups are like, the MVP doesn't need to be secure. The MVP doesn't need to be this. The MVP doesn't need to be clean code. Just get the MVP out there. And then they get their funding, and now they have to completely revamp. And now you're wasting more funds because you just wanted to get funds in the first place. You know, I've seen it so many times. It's my biggest pet peeve. I like to do things the right way the first time.
Right. Security by design.
Don't skip. They love
Right.
to skip.
Yeah, because to your point, if you didn't build in that type, if you didn't consider that in the beginning, then you might have to revamp your entire structure. So it's not just, oh, this is something I could throw into the mix later. Your whole architecture might change.
Yep. Every time I've heard people say, "Oh, we'll just do that later," never got back to it. Everywhere
Right.
I've been.
Oh, yes. Oh, no. The worst one is, oh, I'm just going to do documentation later. No, do it now, because if you leave, I need to make sure that someone else can take this over. Or guess what? If you don't do it and then 2 years later you have to come back to it, you're not going to remember a thing.
Nope. I'm big on documentation as we're building. I'm like, what's your preferred documentation? Slack has like the canvases now. I like Confluence because I'm so in touch with Jira and it's just connected. But I also like Notion. Notion's pretty popular. I'm like, write it down somewhere. I will convert it later. And if I can't read this and I can't set this up, then we need to work on it.
Look, if the tool is the problem, just stick it in Notepad, okay? I don't care where you put it. Just put it somewhere.
Okay. Yes, write it down. They hate doing it. I don't know why people hate doing documentation, but it's really important. Even within code, like if like people like they'll either put nothing in their code or they'll put like awkward comments in their code instead of like documentation comments where it's like, okay, if I extract all of this, it's going to tell me what all these functions do, how to use them. So I'm like a stickler for all that stuff.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah. That's why you're successful with your company now, for sure.
Yeah, it's. I think this year's gonna be fun for me because I'm like, last year I was just scared and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do one client, and I was like, I mean, one client is not really gonna put me in a position to be able to do this, for a lot more people at higher value. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll do like try to do 2 clients a quarter. I'm probably not gonna do that, but if I reach for that, then I've done like 5, 6 clients for the year.
Yeah, and I think that it also has to do with like having a balance, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to figure out how you can scale, but then trying to figure out what's going to be the right mix of having the talent, having the right amount of clients, and just making sure that you're not burning yourself out trying to fill in the gaps and manage it all.
Yes. Yep. I knew that I needed I was like, dang, I've been doing this by myself. Maybe I need a co-founder. At this point I'm kind of late in the game. I don't know if there's like rules to when you can have a co-founder, but it's been like 3 years, but I've been officially doing business for like the past year. And I was like, I need somebody who's either business oriented but understands tech. I don't know if two very technical people can do it, or maybe I'm the business oriented person, So I'm in the process of figuring that out and just having a partner so that way we can do a lot more. So my VP of engineering, the goal is, eventually we'll be just partners instead of like me paying him because seems he's very trustworthy. We met at a networking event.
Nice.
Yeah.
Networking events are always like you just never know who you're going to meet.
No.
They're always insightful in some sort of way.
Yeah, if you meet one person, the networking event did what it needed to do. I tell people not to put too much pressure on the networking events when you first start. Like, it's gonna be a little awkward, especially if you're used to always being with someone when you go places. Networking events, you're probably just gonna pull up by yourself, and then it's like, okay, how do you get the conversations going? Like, how do you get the momentum? I walk right up to people and I say, "Hi, I'm Victoria. What do you do?"
Right.
And it
Yeah.
starts a conversation because people like to talk about themselves, and we're here to network.
Exactly. And I think it's almost like it's the same concept of when people have to go on interviews, right? And the first couple of you, like you maybe you're kind of shy, but then you just keep doing it and doing it, and then you'll get the confidence to just talk to anybody, and it just becomes second nature.
Yep, it
Yeah.
sure does. That's I think. I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I have some friends who are like introverts, so I'm like, okay, how do I help them help themselves at this point. So I've been like, I guess that's like the coaching side of things that I do at this point, where it's like I help people network, I help people transferable skills, like get into tech or like get hands-on experience, and I'll let them come work on the app and then teach them some code or teach them the standards or teach them Jira or Agile, whatever it is for
Mhm.
whatever career they're trying to get into. But try to help people network because I think for me it does come easy. Like I think I just talk a lot, but I'm also so well versed in the technology world that when people talk to me, they're like, "Oh, she knows her stuff," and then they find out how old they're like, "How are you this old? But you know this much of tech?" I'm like, "I started early."
Nice. Awesome. So, what about your latest career adventure? Do you want to share more about that?
Yes, that's a great segue because we're just going from networking.
Yes.
I went to a networking event in Atlanta. March, I think I was working at a fintech startup at the time. And I don't know if you own a startup, but I don't know if you ever worked for a startup where like the CEO starts to get frustrated because there's no returns on funds and stuff. And they just started getting like really disrespectful. And I think some people can deal with that. They're like, oh, like there's so much pressure. And I'm like, no. So like the CEO had yelled at me one too many times for absolutely no reason. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to this networking event. And I went to the networking event, not with the intentions of getting a job, just networking and getting to know people. And the event was being thrown by JP Morgan. It was like their DEI event. They were opening an Atlanta Tech Center. And I went there and I was just talking to people. What do you do? Oh, you do that? That's so cool. I'm familiar with that. Or like I'd meet college students and they're like, this is where I want to go. And I'm like, oh, like, do you have any skills right now? Have you taken any coding classes? Literally just doing what I do. But apparently I was noticed within the room because I think like a day or two later, like 3 different teams had reached out to me and they wanted to interview me. So I was like, oh, I can work there. Like, I don't have a bachelor's degree. And they're like, no, like, we just heard you talking and like it sounds like you really know your stuff. So I interviewed with 2 teams. I was like, I'm not doing that many interviews because it's like 3 interviews per team. So I did 2 teams, got the offers, and one was a business analyst role. So that goes to show that like I can do the business side, but also I can do the engineering side because I got both. And of course, I chose software engineering because like why would I leave? And now I work at JP Morgan full time. I've been there since April, and it's been great. Like I never really had like I didn't go to a university. I don't have a bachelor's. So, there they tell people like get a corporate job, get a corporate job. Like, oh, these corporate sponsors are here, like go talk to them. And I didn't have like that excitement put into me, I guess. So when I got it, I don't think I was as excited about it as I am now. Like now I realize the difference I can make with them, but also the difference they can make in my life, because I've been learning a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think so too.
So, what made you like? We know that second nature, right? Going the engineering path was a no-brainer, but what made you decide not to go the business analyst route?
Yeah, so I was already a little scared to go into the business side. I don't know. I just feel like I'm like a creative and I feel like I would get bored a little bit because this business analyst and not really like product ownership. Like product ownership, you're helping design the product and you help them break down the tickets for the engineers. Business analyst is kind of like right under that, where it's like they get like the aftermath of the product owner, if you ask me. And also my manager that what would have been my manager if I took that role would have sat in Ohio. And I felt like my manager for the software engineering team sat here. So if we're gonna be in the office, I'm a fan of like in person. You can just leave a better impact on people when they've seen you face to face. Like being completely virtual, they start doing layoffs or whatever it might be, and they're like, I don't really know this person. Sometimes they talk on calls, sometimes they don't. Like, you start getting judged a little harsher when you're really just like 100% remote. And then my manager here was like a huge advocate for like Black women in tech. He was like, honestly, he was like, he was like, I called him and I was like, hey, like, what's your team like? Like, what's like, if there's any issues, like, how do you go about like figuring out the debates of we should do this? No, we should do this, And he was just like, oh, first of all, Black women in actual technical roles, I think is really important to keep. And then he was like, as far as like if the team is having like debates on what to do, we encourage healthy debates because we know that that's the only way we get change, and that's the only way we innovate, and that's the only way we grow. So I was like, decision made. And then of course, like, the money's different, right? The other role was having a hard time. The engineering role, I mean, they called me, they interviewed me, they made me an offer immediately. The business analyst team was a little bit slow, but they don't do really like competition in there. They're not like, oh, we're going to outbid this other team. They had to match my first offer. And I think they were having a hard time matching that offer because business analysts don't get paid as much as software engineers. So it just like it wasn't in the budget. So I was like, I hear you, God. I hear you. I'm gonna stick with engineering. Best decision I ever made.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
I could see you in both roles too. Like from a basic understanding perspective, right? I can see you just whatever you choose to do, you're going to do an amazing job because I can see you as the business analyst. You know what? Talk to the technical folks. No, let me show you what needs to happen because you need to match these business requirements to the output of this technology because it's not cutting it.
I'd be really good at the role, and that's why they wanted me so bad, because they were like, you are actually an engineer, and they were questioning me like, why would you go from engineering to business analyst? I was like, I thought the business analyst role would be cool for my business because
Okay.
I'm already an engineer, so I'm like, if I do business analyst in corporate, maybe it would help me kind of like figure out like how to be a business analyst for my business, but I already have that aspect. Like, I feel like when people ask me where they should start in tech, they're like, oh, like, do you recommend like product ownership or like project management or Scrum Master? I'm like, I recommend software engineer. I know it sounds crazy because obviously you have to learn how to code. It's a very rewarding career. If they're gonna do layoffs on a tech team, all of the business roles are gonna go first because software engineers can technically do it. We can create our own Jira tickets. We can do our own UI UX designs. We can figure out product requirements. Like, we really can. We're probably not the best at it, but we can do it. So I'm like, if you want a career that's rewarding and like not layoff proof, because there have been tech layoffs, but it's definitely going to be the last to go. And so I'm like, at least learn JavaScript. If you learn JavaScript, a little bit here and there, you can be a front end engineer, and then you have a fruitful career.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, was there any particular language that people should start with?
I think JavaScript is great because it's a functional language, but it's the back end, like just Java, is object oriented, and I feel like it's a little more brain power to learn back end. And when I first started doing software engineering, I was too caught up in the specifics, like the nitty gritty specifics, that I couldn't move along fast enough. I was like not realizing that, like, okay, read it now, get a high level understanding because we'll break it down later in the course. I was just like too much on top of things. So I'm like, JavaScript is cool. They teach you how to use functions, teach you how to use their libraries. You start putting little things together. Then you're like, oh, I understand how coding works. And I understand how these things like relate to each other. Click event here opens this. Like, I think it's a really good first language to learn. And there's like little online courses that are like super simple, that will teach you like little bits of it at a time.
Yeah. Or you can go the very, very simple route and go to code.org where the kids learn how to code. Because it does blocks, right? It does show you little scripts. So you can learn that way too. That's why I taught my son when he was 6 years old, code.org, so he can understand like, how the building blocks come together. And then
because it's conceptual.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep. The spelling of it, the syntax is that's like the easy part. But if you understand the concept of coding, I know a lot of coding languages, and I realized it's because, like, for me, once I grasped the concept,
Yep.
I realized every coding language was pretty much almost around the same. So it's all about like learning how to spell. Like, if you're saying, like, if you're learning English or learning a different language, and you're like, well, how do I say walk but in Spanish, or how do I say walk but in French? Like, I feel like coding is like the same thing. It's like, okay, how do I create an array but in Java? How do I create an array but in Python? I think it's just a conceptual thing.
That's true. You are
Yeah.
taking me back. I haven't touched code in so long. You are taking me way back.
I don't know that I'll ever, even in my business journey, like stop coding.
You know what? For me, I had to, right? I get so mentally bogged down, especially when I'm trying to figure something out, that I can't think about nothing else. And I
Yeah.
have to figure it out. And then I'm on the computer all night long trying to solve this, like trying to put something together. And I don't have the mental capacity because I'm spread too thin.
Yeah. That is so true though. Yeah. That's why when people ask, they're like, how many hours of work do you have like left to do tonight? I'm like, I don't know.
Until this thing is done.
Until it gets done, until it works, until it does what I need it to do. It could be 1 hour,
Right.
could be 4. I
Could
don't
be
know.
fine. You don't know, right? And
Yeah.
that's the, I was like, I can't manage my time with,
Yeah.
being in the trenches of writing code. But I get it because I know that you love it. Um, I get it. I get it. I do.
Yeah. I'm like, usually if I know I'm gonna code that night, I just clear I just like I don't make plans. I'm like, no, this is what I'm gonna do tonight.
So are you skipping plans with family and friends?
I I surprisingly balance it all very well.
That's
I don't know
good.
how I do it, but I do have an assistant, and I do have like developers and stuff, and I'm really good at shutting off. I don't know. I feel like I was just telling someone this yesterday. I was like, honestly, it's gonna be if it's burning now, it's gonna be burning when you come back. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like, it's the weekend. Like, you need to if you're exhausted, if you need to shut it down, shut it down. That's why I have two separate phones. They're like, why do you have two separate phones? Because if it's Saturday after 12 p.m., I'm not available to no.
Right.
So I just shut it down. But I'm trying not to get to a spot where like I shut it down too much, where it's like if there's an emergency. But if there's an emergency, I'm pretty sure I'll still be reached.
Yeah. Like somebody knows how to get in contact with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my assistant.
Yep.
They'll just
Exactly.
email her. Yeah,
Yep. Same here. I'm like, please, especially if I'm on vacation, right? Like, no, please don't
yeah,
bother me. But someone knows how to get in contact with me if absolutely needed.
yeah. I can't wait for vacation. Someone asked me the other day, they're like, have you taken a vacation lately? I was like, not really. They're like, when's your next vacation? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't really plan on taking one, but I'm not burnt out or anything. I'm just like having fun doing I code all day long. I'm literally doing what I enjoy all day long. I don't really need to take a break from it yet.
Says the person who loves it, right?
Yes, exactly. I'm like, who? Like, why? I love this. Sometimes I'm like, why did I choose this career?
Because
It
it can
chose me.
be it can be a lot sometimes, but I understand how just when it's rewarding, it's amazing.
It is. It is really rewarding. Like, I remember my foster mom told me that I was going to do something in technology, and I was like, no, like I'm not. I suck at. Well, I was good at math, but I was like, I don't think I'm like nerdy enough. I was like, I'm not smart enough for that. And then her daughter, which is my sister, she was like, I think I see you doing something in business, and I was like, ew, no. And she's like, you should play golf so that way, because business people they're on the golf course and I'm just like, no, no, no. I want to be an FBI agent. I'm going to find psychopaths and stuff, and I'm going to do what they do on Criminal Minds. And here I am, tech and business. I was like,
You
okay.
want to find so psychopaths.
I did. I definitely wanted to like study their patterns and like find them. And like, yeah, I wanted to work for the
Mm.
FBI. I know it's interesting. I wonder if I would have done that if I didn't do tech.
So interesting. So that's always something that's intriguing, right? Like if you weren't in tech, where would you be? It would
Yeah,
be finding the psychopath at the
most
FBI.
if I had it my way, yeah,
That's
definitely.
awesome. I think that I probably would have went to culinary school maybe because I love to cook. I
Ooh,
used to think about that a lot. Like I used to think about going to culinary school. And I had a bartending company.
a bartending company?
Bartending, yep.
Oh, that's cool. I did
Yeah.
bartending for a while.
So it's something about the creativity of putting ingredients together, you know?
Yeah, I liked it too.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then there's that social aspect, right? Of meeting people and talking, and you never know who you're going to meet.
Yep. You meet a lot of people bartending and serving.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. I think we had a really good conversation today, and I am very excited that you were able to join me today. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a good conversation.
It
It's
was
a good conversation to have,
absolutely.
talking about what you love.
Yes. Anything else you want to add before we end?
No, but I guess if people want to contact me,
Mhm.
yeah, my LinkedIn is Victoria Walker. If you put Vivify Solutions, it'll come right up. There's no picture for some reason, but that's me.
Excellent. Well, thank you. People know how to get in contact with you, and I really enjoyed this conversation today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.